Hi, I'm Sue from Divine Intervention, and I'm here to demonstrate to you how to remove VA out of your wine. When you come to the shop to pick up your machine, you'll generally get two columns, and that's these, a jumper hose and the machine. When you get back to your winery with these items, the first thing you really want to start doing is rinsing down the columns. And what I recommend to you is you hook up either your jumper hose, or if you happen to have a winery hose, you can hook that up to the outlet line. And these are all 1.5" triclover fittings. So we're going to hook up this to the column. And then what we're going to do is you're going to hook up your water line to the inlet. There's an in and an out on these, so you need to be aware of that and follow those. So from the inlet line, I'm going to hook up a water hose, which I happen to have here, and we'll hook that up like this. And what we're going to do is start rinsing these down. One item that is going to be critical to this whole thing is to have a handheld pH meter. You're going to need that for this whole process. So I have my pH meter right here. Keeping the bleeder valve on the top of the column closed. It's the gray valve. You want to keep that closed. And on all of our columns we have tags that tell you how long to rinse it for. Till the pH coming out the outlet line is 10.5 to 10.8. At that point you want to shut off the water. Don't open the bleeder valve, we'll just keep that closed, but we're going to shut off the water, and then you can hook it up to your pH correction column. Same process, you hook it up to the inlet, and then the jumper hose or your winery hose goes on the outlet line. Keeping the bleeder valve closed, you're going to rinse this for 15 minutes. Once you have done both of these columns, we're going to disconnect it from the inlet line, set the water aside, and then we're going to hook up the nitrogen. We have to blow out these columns now because they're full of water. So you hook up your nitrogen like that. I kind of keep re-emphasizing to the inlet line because I've had a lot of people hook it up to the outlet line. So you want to hook it up to the inlet line, turn on your gas, the nitrogen, and up to about 15-20 psi. That's going to blow out these columns. So once you've done that, again making sure that the bleeder valve is stayed closed. So your columns are prepped and ready to go, you've blown them both out. So what we're going to do at that point is set the columns aside and start preparing the machine. Okay, now that we've rinsed down our two columns, they're set and ready to go, we need to start rinsing down the machine. It comes to you with citric in it, so we're going to rinse out that citric with water. You have the option of hooking up a winery water line into the wine inlet at the bottom, but I'm going to go ahead and use a bucket of water. You can do that as well. I've got my bucket of water to the inlet line, and from the outlet line I have my hose going to a bucket. You could also go to a drain. So what I'm going to do is first open the butterfly valve on the wine inlet, making sure to keep the valve 7, which is the blue handle valve, and valve 6 at the top closed. You're going to open up here valve 1. That's this one right here. There's a little slide on these valves, so you kind of have to slide it up and then open it. This is valve 3. I'm going to keep that closed. This is valve 2 and valve 4. The wine is not, or the water is not coming this way at all, so it can be opened or closed. So I have valve 2 closed and valve 4 open. So anyway, okay, so we're going to turn on the machine. And I'm going to open up this pressure valve on the intensifier. The water line is going to draw the water in, and you can see it's going to come out the outlet line right here. You're going to work on this until you taste water with no citric in it. And it just takes a few minutes. It's just working through the machine. Once you have water with no citric in it, we're going to now close the pressure valve on the front of the intensifier And it's going to start working its way through these membranes, coming up the flow meter, and it's going to start going out valve 1, just like it's doing right here. Same thing here, you're going to taste out for water with no citric in it. Once you've got that, relieve the pressure on the pressure valve and shut off the machine. So we're set with that. The next thing that we're going to do is blow out these membranes. There's water, obviously, there's water in them now, so we want to blow them out because we're going to start introducing the wine to this machine. So I get my nitrogen and I'm going to hook it up, get a clamp, again 1.5 inch triclover. You hook it up to the top of the machine, which is valve 6. Blue handles. Hook that there. The point of doing this is really just to get most of the water out of the machine again before you introduce your wine. So we're going to open valve 6, open valve 7 at the bottom. You're going to turn on the nitrogen over here. On your nitrogen, we're going to turn that on and open this up to about, again, 15 psi, maybe 20. Let it blow out the machine, and once you've blown it all out into your water bucket or your drain, then you're going to shut it off. So I'm going to close this off like that. I'm going to wait for about 5 minutes, and then after that I'm going to do it one more time. What happens is the water kind of settles down in these membranes, and so it's good just to get out as much water as you can. So open it up again, and then blow it out, and then shut it off. So at that point, we're going to disconnect the nitrogen. That. We're going to close valve 6 and valve 7. Okay, now that we've blown out the machine with the nitrogen, we're going to start introducing the wine into the machine. First of all, I recommend that you get a T-piece, 1.5 inches, and 2 valves, 1 on each side, and one's going to hook up to the wine outlet line. This is so you can taste out, and the other line will be going back to your tank. I've already taken the liberty of putting it on the machine, so we can get going on that. The other line that's going to go from your wine inlet, you're going to now hook it up to the racking valve on your tank or put it in your barrel, whichever vessel you're using. So we're going to make sure some of these valves are open and some are closed. The taste out valve on the wine outlet will either go to drain or to a bucket. You'll want that to be opened. You'll want the other valve on the other part of the T to be closed. That will be the one going back to your tank. You'll want the wine inlet valve open. Valve 6 and valve 7 again will be closed. We're going to have valve 1 opened. Valve 3 will be closed. Valve 2 will be closed, and I have valve 4 open. Okay, so the next step that we're going to do is open the racking valve on your tank. And if you have any air in the line, you can open up valve 5 and it'll get all the air out, and then the wine will start coming through, so you won't have wine or air in your wine. So I'm going to close that because I do have the wine coming through. I'm going to turn on the machine, open the pressure valve, and I'm going to start tasting out the sample valve for wine with no water in it. Now this happens to be a light color, so we have to start tasting out. You can crank this down a little bit just so it's not flowing so hard. So you're going to taste out for wine with no water in it. Once you have that, we're going to shut off the machine. I'm going to put the hose that goes back into your tank. That's the outlet, coming out the outlet line, the other valve. The sample valve I'm going to close, and I'm going to make sure this one going back to your tank is now open. So what's going to happen is it's just going to be recirculating the wine in the system. We have not tasted out valve 1 for alcohol with no water, so we now need to do that. I'm going to turn back on the machine, close the pressure valve, like that, and it will start coming out valve 1. And what it's doing again is just pressurizing the system. It's making permeate. The concentrate is going to be going back to your tank, and now we're going to be making permeate, which is water, alcohol, and some phenols. So we're over here at valve 1. We're going to start tasting out valve 1 again for alcohol with no water in it. And one way that you can tell that it has alcohol is it starts foaming. And it'll take a little bit of time to work through the system, but you'll see it start foaming. And this permeate in general will be clear. It might have a pink tinge, but most of the time it's just clear, so don't mistake that for water. You have to keep tasting out till you have alcohol in there. And once you have that, we're going to shut off the machine. Well, first I relieve the pressure, and then I shut off the machine. Okay, so now we've shut off our machine, and we're going to hook up our columns and start getting ready to process. We are going to take the triclover fitting right here out of housing 1 with the white tubing, connect that to the in of the pH correction column, and from the out of the pH correction column, you're going to go to the in of the VA column. From the out of the VA column, you're going to come back to housing number 2 and just hook that up. Now, to make sure that our valves are in order that we need, we are going to close valve 1 because we're done tasting out. We're going to open valve 3 because we want the flow to come this way and start going through the columns. We're going to open valve 2. We'll be tasting out there as well. And we're going to close valve 4. Valve 5 is closed, blue handles are closed, the inlet is open. So we're ready to go. Just keep in mind we still want these bleeder valves on the top closed. We're going to turn on the machine. We're going to pressurize it by closing the knob, and we are ready to go. The concentrate is going back into the tank. So you can see it's starting to fill the clear housing, the permeate is. It's going to start making its way into the columns. And so you got to kind of wait. This takes a bit of time. It's kind of like watching paint dry. So you can see the housing is filled. Might be a little bit loose, so we got to tighten that up. Make sure this one's tight. It's working its way through the jumper hose from the pH correction column into the VA column. And then from there, it's going to make its way back into this clear housing and out valve 2. Now, we already know we have alcohol in the system. We've tasted out valve 1. So we're going to start tasting out once it gets to valve 2 for alcohol as well. When you first start tasting out valve 2, it's going to taste a little bit causticy, a little bit not good. You got to wait a little bit until, again, you can see it start foaming, and you'll know that you kind of have alcohol. And when you taste this alcohol too, it's not going to taste like valve 1's alcohol. It's going to be a little bit lighter, not such a strong mouthfeel. So here we are. We've filled up cartridge housing 2. What we're trying to do is actually get all the water out of the bottom of these columns that was still left in it. And that's what we're tasting out valve 2 for. We're going to be tasting until you get to alcohol. Again, it can take 15 minutes. On the larger columns, it can take upwards of a half hour. So once you have alcohol here with no water in it, we shut off the machine again. Oops, relieve the pressure. I'm going to open the bleeder valve on the first column, and I'm going to make sure that valves 2 and 4 are both closed. I'm only opening the first one, not the second. So turn on the machine again, close the pressure valve, We're going to wait for it to come out the blue tubing. And as you can see, these valves are closed. This is one of the few times they're both closed at the same time. But we have the bleeder valve open. So we are backfilling these columns and pushing out the nitrogen that we had blown them out with. Okay, so we're going to wait to fill these columns till permeate comes out the bleeder valve. Once you have it coming out the gray bleeder valve, you open the second column's bleeder valve and close the first. Never close one and then open. You want to open one always first. Once it's coming out the second column, I prefer to shut off the machine. And then I open valve 4, again sliding the glide, open valve 4, and close the bleeder valve. Now, turn on the machine, make sure your pressure valve is closed, and you are up and operating. You're all set and ready to go. So at this point, what you need to be doing is monitor your time. We always send a sheet. To monitor everything on here. So you'll want to put your start time, you know, the pressure gauge, which is right here, your flow. This is gallons per minute. You'll multiply it by 60 and that'll give you your gallons per hour. And you put all that on your sheet. And that way, if something goes wrong and you need to call, we'll have some information to work on. You're going to run it the amount of time you need to lower the VA to your required number. Once you've done that, you're going to relieve the pressure on the pressure valve and turn off the machine. So, you finished your lots. We now want to empty all this out and put it back into the tank, and then we will start cleaning up the machine. Okay, the first thing that we need to do is close the valve from the feed tank. And then we're going to close the butterfly valve going to the winery line. Next thing you know, we're going to purge out your columns, disconnecting the 1.5" tri-clover fitting from the first column, and we're going to hook up the nitrogen. What's in these columns, as I mentioned before, is your permeate, and it needs to go back into your tank. You can either blow it into a bucket, or right now we have the outlet line going to the tank, so we're just going to go with that. This doesn't matter too much, but valve 3 right now is open, valve 1 is closed, valve 2 is closed, and valve 4 is open. Valve 4 needs to be open. Very slowly, I'm going to open up the nitrogen, allowing the permeate that's in these columns to work its way through and into the tank. And you'll see the nitrogen in the second cartridge housing start bubbling, and when you see it all nitrogen, then you shut off your nitrogen, and I'm going to close the outlet line, this butterfly valve, right there. So that's done. We're going to disconnect the nitrogen, relieving the pressure from the gray valve. Set that there, and then we can just set this here. These now are complete. We can move them out of the way, and we can disconnect the 1.5" tri-clover fitting from the outlet line of the second column. Just set that there. Now we've put the columns aside, we've blown those out, and your permeate is still in these clear cartridge housings and in the pre-filter. So I'm going to close valve 3 so that the flow doesn't keep going. Unscrew the clear housing, like that. And I pour this into a bucket. If you're working in a barrel, you could pour it directly in there. I pour it in here and then transfer that to your tank. So we've got 2 of those to do. That. And then the pre-filter as well. We want to unscrew that. And there's a little bit in there too, so we'll pour that into our bucket. Okay, now that we've emptied out the pre-filter and the 2 clear housings, we're going to connect the 1.5" tri-clover lines together. And next, we're going to blow out the membranes. I'm going to connect up the nitrogen to valve 6 at the top here. Opening valve 6, and I'm going to open valve 7 at the bottom and the inlet butterfly valve. So those are open. I'm draining mine into a bucket. You could take that inlet line if you wanted to and put it up over into your feed tank. Now I'm going to turn on the nitrogen, about 15 psi, just very gently. Have it flowing through, and you'll see it going out the outlet line. Once you see bubbles start coming through the hose, then you need to shut it off. Close valve 6. And we can close valve 7, and again the inlet line, the butterfly valve. We're going to disconnect the nitrogen. And then our next step is to start rinsing down the machine and getting it all cleaned up. We're on the final stages of this cleanup of the machine. What we need to do is start rinsing down the membranes and cleaning off all the particulars that are on them. You can either use a winery hose and hook it up to the inlet line, or you can use a bucket of cold water and pump it through with your winery pump going out the valve 6 on the top. I'm going to use the bucket of water, and I'm going to open my butterfly valve. I'm opening valve 7, which is the blue handle. I'm also going to open up valve 6 on the top, and then this is going to go through to your pump and into a drain or a bucket. Once you have run cold water through the system, then you do the exact same thing with hot water. You can either use your hot water from the winery, or you can set up a bucket of hot water no more than 120 degrees. Same process through the inlet with valve 6 and 7 both open and going to drain. You do that till it runs clear, and then we set up a bucket of TSP water, and we're going to pump that through the machine and really clean the membranes. It's a 1% solution in your Brute. You can run one cycle of this to drain if you would like. I'm going to just start recirculating it. So again, I'm going to turn on my winery pump. And let it just start recirculating in the bucket. We're going to do this until, I don't know, about 5 minutes, something like that. You'll be surprised at how after each time you've run the clear water and it goes clear, the TSP water will turn purple again if you're running red wine. And the goal here is to keep doing this cycle until the TSP water runs clear, not your water. So we're going to do that for 5-10 minutes. You just recirculate it. We're recirculating that hot water, and then shut it off. In between each one, in between each cycle, disconnect or get another bucket of hot water and run that through here. Again, you keep doing that as many times as you need to do till the TSP water runs clear. You've cleaned out your membranes with your hot water and TSP recirculating it. Finally ending with a rinse through with hot water, and now we're going to clean out the permeate stream. We've finished our columns, so I moved those out of the way. We've clamped together our 3/8 inch tri-clover fittings here. Open valve 3, open valve 4, and close valve 2. And what's going to come through the system, I've got our taste out valve opened as well. So it's just going to kind of come in and out of the bucket. I'm going to turn on the machine and close the knob. It's going to start pressurizing the machine which will take a little bit of time, and it's starting to go through the thing. You can see there's color in the taste outline, and that's because there was a little bit still left in the system as well. So you'll start doing this until that TSP water runs clear again, the same procedure. The first time, let it go to drain or in an empty bucket. Then you can run hot water through the system, do the TSP again, and it's the same as when you did the membranes themselves. You just keep doing it till that TSP water runs clear. Once you've done that, relieve the pressure and shut off the machine. We're going to run a final cycle of citric. We've got your brute set up, hook up some citric in there. You may have already used a bucket of hot water instead of a hose line, which would be fine as well. But now you're going to put your hose in the citric, making sure the taste outline is open, valve 4 is open, valve 3 is open, 1 and 2 are closed. Make sure the pressure valve is open, turn on the machine, and then pressurize the machine by closing the knob. And it's just recirculating in your citric. If you're going to store the machine for any length of time, maybe you own a machine, you're going to want to put 1% solution of KMBS and citric in the bucket, and then just recirculate that. That'll keep the membranes fresh, and you'll need to redo that, rinse that out, run a cycle of TSP, and then redo the KMBS and citric. Probably once a month is a good idea. It just keeps your membranes going fresh. And that's it for this video. I hope it helps you. I hope you all do well. Talk to you later.